Okay, welcome back to the Are You Strong show. I want to say a unique guest, and before I say his name, and I'm going to tell you why in a second, I think he's unique. But I did a little homework on you, and I looked up your educational background and why it's I'm going to say this person is unique. Well, you'll hear about it as we start talking, but this young man did 85 credits in one school year at Stockton University, which was who does 85 credits in 1 year? Went to Temple and Rutgers University. At Rutgers, he majored in kinesiology and exercise science while playing football, which is a ridiculously hard major, right? Went to South College in Tennessee, got a doctorate degree in physical therapy. Went to Faulkner University, got a doctor in health science, and was in the Army National Guard. I don't know how this young man did all that stuff, but I would like to introduce not just Tommy Wyatt, but Dr. Tommy Wyatt. Tommy, welcome to the show.
I appreciate that, Jeff. Glad to be here.
That's one heck of a background. You're like, holy smokes, you know?
Yeah.
And why I say it's unique. How many, if I don't know where to find this information in this stat, but I wonder how many college athletes, football players become doctors. I don't
You
know.
know, I'd be interested to find out as well.
It's got to probably be as low as the percentage of high school athletes who go on and play in college or go on to the NFL and play that. It's got to be even lower than that.
Yeah, it's probably pretty low.
So before I start peppering you with all kinds of questions, why don't you just give the audience a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and let them know who you are.
Yeah, like Jeff said, I'm Tommy. I'm from South Jersey, from the Washington Township area. Went to high school, Overbrook High School in Pine Hill, New Jersey. Played three sports in high school. Played football, basketball, ran track. Football kind of chose me, and I chose football. Went on to go play at Temple and Rutgers. Graduated, became a PT. Down in Charlotte, North Carolina, now doing a sports residency, and yeah, studying, getting another doctorate, doing crazy stuff.
And what's this doctorate going to be?
This is the Doctor of Health Science. It's an applied PhD essentially.
So can I ask you a crazy question?
Yep, for sure.
Does education ever end?
No, not for me. See, I didn't like school growing up. I was not that I was bad at it. I just didn't enjoy it too much. But I'm just obsessed with being like a student at this point. I don't know. Maybe I just like having exams or something. I don't know. I'm weird, but the further you go in school, the more interesting it gets. And I hate not knowing things.
All right.
So I'm just gonna keep it going.
So it's probably the more you know, the more you want to know.
Right. Because the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. So you gotta figure it, you gotta find it out.
Oh my God. Well, I'm gonna throughout the show, I'm gonna ask you all kinds of questions about school and education and sports. So let's go back to I don't want to say the very beginning, but you mentioned before football, basketball, and track in high school, and you said football kind of found you. Talk about that. What motivated you to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go on and play football in college. And it's not like you played at smaller schools either. You went on to play at two very big schools, football wise and academic wise too. What was the motivational factor to say, I'm going football?
Yeah, so football was always the main sport, even from youth football. I kind of just played the other sports to stay in shape for football. But it wasn't until probably my freshman year of high school where I kind of set the goal that I wanted to play collegiately. Um, I guess it just kind of came with the nature of seeing college football players. Growing up in South Jersey, we have our cream of the crop. So we have our local superstars that were
Yeah.
shutting it down on the field. And I was like, man, if they could do it, I can do it. We're from the same area, and just training with them. And there's a lot of great football in South Jersey that kind of goes unnoticed. If you look at a lot of NFL rosters and Division I rosters across the country, a lot of South Jersey guys there. So it was a great it was a great environment to play in.
Yeah.
And so that kind of breeded my competitive side. And I was like, you know what? I think I could do it. And, just me being crazy me, I got to do things at the highest level I could possibly could do it. So that's kind of what pushed me there.
So who do you think's the biggest name coming out of South Jersey in football?
Right now,
Just the one that you might know, past, current,
oh,
whatever.
I mean, I got to shout out all my guys. We got Isaiah Pacheco, Bo Melton. I mean, all of the Rutgers guys from South Jersey, got to give those guys love. And again, you can look across any roster. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a South Jersey guy on all the 32 NFL teams right now.
Yeah.
And if you look at all the Big Ten SEC schools, they're all grabbing South Jersey, Greater Philadelphia guys.
Yeah.
So way too many to list, but we're everywhere.
It's a big
We're
list.
everywhere.
It's
Yeah,
definitely
we're
a big
everywhere.
list, right? So thinking about college football, we can talk about while you were playing. It's not like you've been out for a long time either. It's only a couple of years since
I
you
feel like
stopped.
it.
It feels like forever, right? But
Yeah.
what do you think contributed to your personal growth and development into the path you're in now? Like, was there anything sports related that say, hey, you know what? If it wasn't for this in my sports career, I probably wouldn't be doing that. Anything jump out at you?
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's funny you say that because I was actually thinking about this earlier. If if I did not have my college football experience, I don't think I would be as driven as I am in my professional career as a physical therapist. I there was just something about my experience playing college football that kind of lit a fire under me to not let not replicate that situation professionally after football. I've always been academic minded, so I knew I was going to go on to further school, but I kind of took all of those good and bad experiences from being a college football player and molded them into, the drive and motivation, determination I have today professionally. So I could attribute a lot to playing college football for sure.
Awesome. So this is a tough one, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Academics, the demands, kinesiology. I mean, that's probably one of the hardest majors in college. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know engineering's up there, and that stuff, but kinesiology has got to be one of the toughest. How the heck did you balance that in football?
Yeah, it was a juggle. So I actually also did biochem in undergrad, which kind of gave me a little bit more trouble than the exercise science did. There were times where I would have 3 hour biology or chemistry labs and trying to schedule those things with a couple hours of football practice and lifts and meetings and, leaving practice early or showing up to practice late or, not getting too much time to study on the week of game day. And um, just having to meet the demands, especially at an academic institution like Rutgers,
Yeah.
to meet the same demands as the general student population while having a third of the time to complete the work academically was probably the most challenging. But again, in hindsight, it made me very, very efficient at doing school and working and everything now professionally. So I feel like I have a ton of free time now, even though I'm probably working more hours than I did when I played football.
Well, you're probably enjoying more of it now than you were back then
Yeah,
too,
yeah, yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So speaking of enjoyment, if you can go back to your college days, what's the most memorable moment that you had, in that world?
I would say, and there's many, and I wish that I uh kind of took in more of it when I was doing it. Sometimes you get into the thick of things and the meat and potatoes of just doing your everyday, grind, and you kind of miss out on like, man, I cannot believe I actually did that. Looking back on it, or college football is starting this weekend. It's like every time I see the schedule come out, I'm like, I can't believe I did that. It's like
Yeah.
it seems like an entire lifetime ago. But I think my most memorable moment was probably my first practice at Temple as a true freshman. Just you see the guys on TV all the time, and the guys, and some guys on the team, and you've been on visits before, so it's not like you're getting starstruck in terms of the athletes on the field, and of course you're one of them. But
Right.
seeing it all put together and saying, "Holy crap, this is not high school football anymore,"
Yeah.
and I'm running the scout team, and Hassan Reddick is playing defensive end. Like, what happened to me playing West Effort High School
Yeah.
and or playing a small high school and knowing what, I'm probably going to score 5 or 6 times today, and I'm probably going to be able to do whatever I want. And you get on the field and you got the third ranked defense in the country and a coach who could care less if you exist.
Yeah.
You're going to go in there, you're going to run these cards of plays, and it's a very humbling, surreal experience to
Yeah.
see how big, fast, and strong these kids actually are.
Yeah.
When you put the helmets on and you're on the field, and you can't find your dad anymore, you can't find your mom anymore.
Yep.
You're on the field with these freak athletes, and it's very humbling. But it was probably one of the most memorable, best experiences I've ever had.
Well, you mentioned, the coaches don't even know your name, but you know where your name is, right? Where's your name when you're a freshman? It's on
Echo.
the tape on your helmet,
Yep. Yep.
right? And they're like, "Who's that? No, what's that kid's
Yep.
name?"
Yep.
And
16.
then after a while, like you make a name for yourself,
Oh
you
yeah.
know. So what do you think's the most valuable lesson you learned being a college athlete?
Humility for sure. Just me being that very middle bottom of the pack guy coming in, it was very it's a humbling experience going from being, you know, the cream of the crop, the most talked about. You're very hyped. You got a whole bunch of people behind you, and you get on campus and you realize that all 22 guys in the field had the exact same experience that you had. They
Yep.
were all the best players in the state. They were all the
Yep.
best players in the country. Nobody really cares. They're
Yeah.
just going to put their helmet on and put you in the dirt.
Yep.
And it's cool. Honestly, I like it. I really love the fact that like I went to a school that challenged me athletically and that I wasn't the cream of the crop. And I'm glad that I didn't go to a smaller school where I got the same praise that I got in high school. Um, Now, when I was going through it, I kind of wish I went to a smaller
Yeah.
school
Oh yeah.
and I was good. But like now that I'm older, I really appreciate the fact that it was like, hey, here's where you think you are, here's where you really are, and
Yep.
you got to prove it to yourself to get back to where you thought you were. So I
So
like that aspect of it.
So where was the moment, and it's funny, everybody, I felt the same way when I went to school and show up as a freshman, you think, hey, how hard can this be? And when was the moment like, holy smokes, I got to work a lot harder right now versus like what you say, I'll
Yeah.
score 5 touchdowns, not a big deal. Don't have to play that hard. All of a sudden, I got to get moving here. Like, when did that click? When when was that moment when that you like, I got to get going?
Yeah, so I will never forget this either. So my first like week of strength and conditioning, I mean, I was getting pretty good, pretty strong, pretty athletic my last 2 years of high school, and I start really getting into weightlifting, and I thought that I was like
Jacked.
running. I thought I was the guy.
Yeah.
You couldn't tell me that I was not athletic. And I get to Temple, and our head strength coach Jeremy Scott, he took all of the freshmen in, and of course I was a redshirt freshman at this time, so you get a little extra lift in, and we lifted, and I thought that I was gonna die. It was the hardest workout I've ever went through in my
Yeah.
life, and we repeated it day after day after day, and I'm like, what is going on? Am I out of shape? Like, is this what it feels like to be out of shape? I mean, what's going on? I was just running laps in high school around these kids, and I get here and I can't pick up a dumbbell. Like
Yeah.
my arms feel like noodles, my leg feels like noodles. I can barely walk to class. I got ice bags on my knees. And then it was super humbling when you get older, when you're an upperclassman and you realize that's like the freshman introductory lift. I mean, this
Yeah.
is like intro to strength training 101.
Yeah.
And I thought I was in the Olympics. It was terrible. And so it was like maturing and seeing like, oh man, I think I'm this guy, and I could barely make it through the freshman lift. And then you have our seniors walking down the hallway who they've been through the program 4 or 5 years. They
And they're
can lift and
laughing
not
at
be
you.
so, yeah, they're like, oh man, come on, let's go, hurry up.
Yep.
And it was good. If that doesn't get you in gear, I don't know what does.
So thinking about that, coming out of high school, big time athlete, going to a big time program, you got very humbled very quickly, right? And you got your butt kicked a little bit, right?
Yeah.
What advice can you give to the young football guys, or really any athlete, any sport, male, female, coming out of high school and going to college? Like, what advice can you give them to be prepared for?
I would say to be patiently aggressive.
Mm,
Be patiently aggressive. Like, it's going to happen to you, but you also don't have to let it happen to you or wait for it to happen to you. So I would just say control what you can control, and have the determination and the grit to fight through what you can't. It's going to be an uphill battle for anybody unless you come in and you're just a naturally freak athlete. But even then, there's going to be a time and place where a weakness is going to be exploited, and you have to be comfortable finding out that you have those weaknesses. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is because you're so praised in high school that your weaknesses aren't really shown. You can hide them. And when you get to the Division 1 level, you can't hide them
don't hide
anymore.
anything. You
You
can't
can't
hide
hide
from
them.
anything.
No.
So, it, is there any specific or moment in time or where you faced like a major, hey, a setback, in what you were trying to accomplish and do?
Yeah, I think that well, there's two. I think one, there was the mentally wrapping my head around not being that guy anymore, and how I was going to handle that at a young age. Um, you know, I, I've never I've never not been the guy since I was 4 years old. And so here I am 13 years later, 17 years old, and the coach could care less if I came to practice or not. It's not going to affect not one thing they're doing that day.
No.
So you're so used to being like, you know, undeniably important to, hey, yeah, you can show up if you want, but we got another guy who can do the same exact thing you can do, and another three guys who can do the same exact thing you can do. So just battling that, like finding out who you actually are as an athlete, who you are as a person, and kind of trying to figure out if it's going to be that fight or flight mode. Are you going to run from it and say, oh no, and play the blame game, or are you going to run towards it and say, I'm just going to show up and get better and see what happens? And so I think that was a big challenge for me. And then of course the other challenge was just doing school at the same time. That was always a big challenge, even starting at Temple. Um, just like I said, scheduling of classes, lack of time and ability to do the schoolwork compared to the general student population. And so it was a big mental challenge,
Yeah.
hurdles, going to practice and you feel like you suck at practice, and then you feel like you're not getting enough time to do school. And so what's going on here, trying to figure that out at a young age and understand and comprehend it all was definitely a challenge.
Well, there's competition, right? There's competition on the field, to play. Then there's competition in the classroom.
Oh yeah.
You sound like the kind of guy who, like you said it before when we were chatting, like, hey, school, maybe growing up, school wasn't your thing, but once you got into college and you found out what school was all about, it became your thing, and it
Yep.
kind of became your personal competition,
Oh yeah.
right? So,
Oh
so can
yeah.
you talk about a time where competition itself could be on the field or in the classroom? It got the best, it brought the best out of you, or it was the worst situation ever?
Yeah, so I definitely think that being a football player, you get the stereotype that you don't care about school. And even if you do care about it, you're probably dumb as a bag of rocks and you can't hang with the nerdy general student population or whatever you want to call it. Um, and I hated that. See, one thing about me, Jeff, is I hate somebody telling me I can't do something.
Mm,
I will never let any human being in life tell me I can't do something or put a limitation on me. So there's nothing that's going to light a fire more than a professor or a fellow student or a fellow colleague telling me that they think I'm incapable of accomplishing a task. Because I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it at a very high level. I can guarantee it. So when I got to Temple, I did have a couple of professors there that shared that stereotype of football players. And thinking back on it, I didn't help too much. I sat in the back and I had my hoodie on
Yep.
and I was paying attention, but perception is reality.
Yeah.
And the perception was I was just that football player hanging out in the back.
Just another guy in the back.
Yep. And one professor in particular, who I love him to death, Dr. Thomas, he's a chemistry professor at Temple. He's an old school football coach. And he pointed to me one day and he said, "You're going to sit in the front and
Ooh.
you're going to answer every question that I have because me and you are going to work together to prove to the rest of the student body that football is just a game and you can do whatever you want."
Wow, that's
And
awesome.
I sat in the front and I just started acing all the exams. I started asking all the questions. He knew that I loved chemistry. I kind of told him on the first day of class that I told him that, I know I play football, but I do care about school. And he kind of took me under his wing and taught me about that perception is reality type of deal. And so I actually became a tutor in that class
Wow.
later on that semester. And that just kind of sparked my competitive edge to, always prove to the general student body that, you know, number one, football is a lot harder than school is. And I wish people knew that. But number two, that you could do both at the same time and be just as successful at the same time.
Now, when he asked you to sit in the front, was that in the middle of a class? Hey, come on down here, sit in the
Oh,
front, or was
yeah.
that
Oh, yeah. In the middle of class, he said, "Hey, come on and sit down." I said, "Oh, man." It was,
that
it
was
was
that
the,
was kind of funky, huh? But you know
it
what?
was kind of funky.
He brings you down. I don't want to say he embarrassed you, but you probably felt a little, okay, this is weird. Everybody's looking at me. But I bet you he didn't embarrass you. He inspired you,
100%.
you know?
100%.
And those are great professors. They instead of saying, yeah, he's just that football guy in the back, who cares? He found a way to get in your head.
Yep.
Because he could have just left you up there. Now,
He
who
sure
knows
could
where
have.
you'd be today if he did?
Yep.
So that inspiration to have you be in the front, now you're in the front, all eyes are on you every class. And the more you speak, the more they hear. And now what happens to the perception? It changes.
It does change. Yep.
Now like that guy's no dummy.
Yep.
Wow, that guy, that's a football guy. He's that smart and he plays football, right? All of a sudden, like, whoa, that's pretty neat.
Yep. Yep. And
So when was the last time you talked to that professor?
so I actually sent him an email last year when I graduated PT school, and I said Dr. Thomas from Dr. Thomas, and
How cool is that?
it was so cool. It was so cool.
How did he respond to
It
that?
was so cool. He actually sent me his number, and I talked to him on the phone about it. I said, "You're not gonna believe this. They let me be a doc. You're not
Oh
gonna
my
believe this.
God.
They let me do this." So,
That must have been a pretty emotional phone call,
oh yeah, for sure, for
you
sure.
know? So while you're in school, and I'm going to bounce back and forth from in school, out of school, and all kinds of stuff, but how did you prepare for life after college? Even though it sounds like college is still going on, you're going to keep
Yeah,
educating, but the traditional 4-year, 5-year deal, how did you prepare for, hey, listen, I know this is what I'm going to do when I'm out of here. How did you
yeah.
prepare for
So
that?
again, reality hits you that you may be towards the latter years of your football career, and part of wrapping your head around that is planning for life after football. And with my newly found love of academics, I knew that I could ride that wave. And so just figuring out what avenue I was going to go there, and just preparing myself by talking to people and learning from people who were not in football. I didn't want to be siloed into learning things from people within football because they tend to be very football minded and very football biased. And so, speaking with general student body academic advisors, speaking with healthcare professionals, I knew I wanted to be in the health field. So, speaking to the healthcare professionals who weren't athletes, growing up, and what did you guys do to be competitive? What did you do to academically stand out? And then finding out a way and a time for me to do that as an athlete, and kind of diversify my resume. I knew that being an athlete would get me in the door in a lot of, post athletic conversations, but I wanted to make sure I stuck around in the room and had that credibility behind me,
Mm.
to say, hey, I'm not here just, I don't want you to let me in just because I played football. I want you to let me in because I'm an intellectual who can also play football. So just setting myself up to be competitive, regardless if I played or not, is pretty much what I wanted to do.
I mean, I love what you just said, build credibility, you know, and that takes time.
Yeah.
It takes years to build credibility, you know. And you talked about, learn from others outside of sports, right? You've heard the scenario, hey, you become the average of the 5 or 6 people you hang around, you know, and if you hang around with people who don't want to be smart, well, you won't be that smart either. You hang around people who want to be doctors, you'll end up being the next doctor, you know, and
Yep.
it's so true. And I try to instill that in the young people that I talk to, is that you talk about perception. You walked into your classroom, your professor's in the back saying, okay, here's another one, and you broke the perception. But he knew if he left you up there in the back and he didn't put you in the front hanging around different people, the perception would never change. Your professor knew that. And I try to inspire other younger people that, hey, if you want to become something, you got to talk to those people that are doing that. But also what you got to remember is, if you want what they want or want what they're doing, you got to be prepared to do what they did to get there.
Yep.
And there's so many young men or women right now that they're going to be listening to this and say, "Oh, Dr. Tommy Wyatt, I want to do what he's doing." Well, then if they go back and they look at your pedigree of academics, they might say, "There's no way I'm doing 85 credits in 1 year." This is not going to happen. So, but if they're willing to do what you did to get where you're at, then let's go.
Yep.
You know,
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely.
that is so cool. So you mentioned one professor so far. Are there other, coaches, teammates, family, that were really crucial to that impacted your success?
I think a lot of people helped me indirectly, by providing examples of what to do and what not to do. So at Rutgers specifically, I mean, we had some really smart dudes on the team. And so it set that precedent of there's no excuse for me to not be able to accomplish these things academically because it's being done in front of my face. And then, of course, you have the examples of, you know, they're all my teammates and I love them to death, but there's some guys that are like, man, when he's done playing football, what is he going to do?
Yeah.
And so you have this diversity in the locker room of like, you have guys like Ryan Cassidy and Aslan Pugh, who you look at these guys and you say, he's going to be successful no matter what.
Now you
If
said
he's
Ryan Cassidy. He was on the show a couple weeks ago. Oh,
All right, we're back.
yeah. You said Ryan Cassidy.
Ryan Cassidy.
He was on the show a couple weeks ago.
Love that guy.
That kid, I shouldn't say kid, young man. He interned here in 2019. And when I
Awesome.
met that young man, I'm like, you're gonna be the athletic director at Rutgers. And he's like, oh,
Heck
no,
yeah.
no, no. I said, the other day when he was on the show, I said, you might be end up becoming the president of the United States. That kid is so dynamic, right?
Oh
I'm like, oh
yeah.
my God. So you're buddies with him.
Oh yeah. And those were the type of the guys in the locker room where it's like, you know, you may, not everybody can be Isaiah Pacheco. Not everybody can be Gus Edwards. Not everybody can be, these, NFL talent guys. But you can have those characteristics within you to pursue the same amount of success outside of football. And so that always attracted to me to those types of teammates because there was nothing that was going to stop them from being successful after this game was over. And so I naturally gravitated towards those people, just because I kind of was maturing and figuring that out myself. Of what, it's okay. I understand that I'm not going to be Tom Brady. I'm not going to be Aaron Rodgers. I'm not going to be Rob Gronkowski. But I can guarantee you that I can get in the same room as those guys.
Yeah.
There's going to be somebody else in that room. Somebody's going to open the door. I'm going to open the door. So there's and we had a team meeting one time, and Brandon Marshall was speaking, and you know I'm not going to lie, I was phasing out most of the meeting, but I do remember him saying one thing, and he said, "There's more than one way to make it to the Super Bowl." And that kind of stuck with me
Mm.
because it just puts into perspective how many routes you can take to get to the same quote unquote level of success. And so, you can play in the NFL, but you can be a team doctor. You can be an athletic trainer. You can be a physical therapist. You can be a nutritionist. You can be a coach. You could be a commentator. You could be the team lawyer. And so there's other very high level successful roles that you can achieve, and you're going to get the same Super Bowl ring.
That
And
is so
so
cool.
that it stuck with me. It's like, you know what? Me playing or not playing this weekend does not determine my success as a person, but the way I handle this week and the way I plan for the next one does.
Wow. That is, there's more than one way to get to the Super Bowl. That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
And it's amazing how one sentence, like you said, you're kind of phasing out, right? You're like, I'm not really paying attention. All of a sudden, boom, it caught you, and you're never going to forget it.
No.
Just like your professor. Come on down here, young man. You're never going to forget that. The rest, you're going to probably tell that story hundreds of times,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and hopefully hundreds of thousands of people hear this and hear that
Oh
story,
yeah. Oh yeah.
which would be good. So, so how about college football? Or let's say college football or college academics or a little bit of both. How did it help shape your identity for yourself? And how do you think that's it's going to influence not just what you want to accomplish for the short term, but how about the long term?
Yeah. I think again, it's a in superficially, it's a marvel. People like hearing about it. They like talking to you. They like meeting you. And they admire your level of athleticism or your former level of athleticism and your former accomplishments playing at that level. And superficially, that's always fun. It's usually the younger population. It's usually, the middle school, high school kids that are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you played in the Big Ten and you got to
Yeah.
play against, XYZ, and you played against this guy and this guy. And it's fun. And it's fun for them and it's fun for me because it's a sense of achievement to be on the
Yeah,
same field as some of those guys.
sure.
But then deeper than that, it's like you really if you really encompass what it means to be a Division 1 athlete, it makes you Division 1 in everything. It's not just about being Division 1 athletically and in football, but are you going to be D1 in the classroom? Are you going to be
Mm,
D1 in the community? Or are you going to have a D1 personality? Are you going to have a D1 perception? What are people going to we speak highly of Ryan. Are people going to speak highly of me? They're not going to remember how many touchdowns I had or didn't have. they're going to remember how you are as a person, you know,
Mm,
what encompass your beliefs, your moral systems, how you carry yourself, how you behave. Um, and so I put a lot of weight in that basket as a person, and that kind of shaped me being able to handle playing or not playing in football, and succeeding or not succeeding academically as well.
that is so cool. That's a line you gotta copyright or something. Being a Division One athlete makes you a Division One athlete in everything you do.
Oh yeah,
That's a pretty powerful statement.
yeah. And I try to tell all the younger high school kids every time they ask me, you know, oh, I want to, you know, they always list an extremely crazy school to play at, you know. Oh, you played at Rutgers? Oh yeah, I want to go to Ohio State. And it's like, you want to go to Ohio State, but I've seen you talking to your dad. You're looking down at the floor the whole time. When the coach is talking to you, you're picking the grass. And, you know, it's not going to cut it, because
Yeah,
here's the thing: you can be a freak athlete and get on the roster, and that's as far as you're going to get.
yeah,
So, you know, it's like developing that professionalism early on, your ability to carry yourself. You know, you can have it athletically, but if you're not covering all of your bases, if you're not taking care of your body at a professional level, if you're not treating practice like a professional, if you're not attending meetings like a professional, your talent will run out at some level, because when you get to a certain level, everybody's talent is the same. You know, so
mm,
for me personally, I I believe, and I hate that I did this, but I ran on talent. When I was younger, all my accomplishments were because I was just naturally talented and gifted at doing such things. So school came naturally, I was good at it. Football came naturally, I was good at it. You know, and when you get to Temple and you get to Rutgers and everybody else is good at it, it tends to, you know, it's less impressive, it's less impressionable, it doesn't really matter anymore. And so you know, sadly I failed to work hard, and that's probably one of my biggest regrets. Is I had the talent, but I stopped working hard when I got there, and I kind of fell into the trap of, well, it's never going to happen to me because XYZ. And XYZ were the excuses that I formed for myself to make up for the fact that I just wasn't doing what I was supposed to do at the level that I was supposed to do it. And of course, there's going to be barriers that are put in front of you by other people. You know, there's coaching, there's personalities with coaches, there's favoritism to certain players, there's things that you can't get around. But I deliberately chose not to attempt to get around them, and instead accepted excuses on, I'm not going to play because XYZ, instead of, I can't play because XYZ. You know, I was very self-limiting. And wrapping back to a previous question on what kind of formed, you know, my successes professionally now, it was the turnaround and maturity of not ever wanting to let that happen to me ever again. And so I just didn't want to. I became very complacent with being a Rutgers football player. I mean, it's cool. What could you not be? You know, what is there not to be complacent about? You get all the gear. You know, you get all the energy. People love you. You know, life is great, and you get very complacent, and then you realize that you're probably not where you wanted to be, or you know, you're not maximizing your potential. And so now that, you know, I'm post athletic career, I just simply refuse to let that happen to me professionally. I fully comprehend that my ceiling is very high, and I'm getting more comfortable with knowing that my ceiling is very high, and so I refuse to settle for anything less than what I believe I'm capable of. And so I'm going to continue to push myself until, you know, I don't know. I don't think there's a stop bone in my body now. I don't.
that's awesome. So Tommy, can we go back and talk about that a bit? About you stopped working hard because You now, I bet you can walk around a practice field. You can walk around a team meeting. Knowing what you know from your experience to now, you can probably spot it.
Oh yeah.
That dude's not putting in the effort.
Yep.
That guy's not paying attention. Whatever it may be. What can you say to the young athlete who is doing that, but hasn't realized it yet?
Yeah. I would say if you're just checking all the boxes, you're not checking the box that you want to check. And
Mm,
so if you're checking all the boxes, it's probably because you don't have enough boxes. You don't have enough goals. Your goals aren't high enough. If you're able to check off everything off your list, you're not shooting high enough. And so you are successful, but you're at a very limited amount of success. And those lofty goals that you're kind of throwing out there for yourself, you are the most limiting. You're not the only limiting factor to you achieving that success. Again, there are other players with talent. There are coaches, XYZ that may stop you from, let's just say, playing time, for example. There are a lot of barriers to you getting playing time, but if you jump to something else beside yourself as the first barrier, you're probably self-limiting.
mm,
So and that's again, that's what I carry with myself now. It's like if I don't achieve something, it's much easier to say, well, I didn't get accepted into this program because the school didn't like me, or the school didn't see this, or the school, and it's like, did the school not see it, or did you not make it apparently clear that you meet this standard? And so it's like I can yell at the coach till I'm blue in the face about how good I am at running the read option. But if he doesn't know or comprehend that I'm good at running the read option, I'm probably not showing him that I can run the read option. I'm not making it apparently clear. And it comes back to that, the little league saying of be so good that they can't tell you no.
mm.
If there's space for them to tell you no, then you're probably limiting yourself in some capacity. It should be a unanimous yes, let's put the kid in the game because he's jumping off the charts. You just doing what you're supposed to do at a superficial level, that's just being a Division I football player. I mean, everybody's going to lift. Everybody's going to go to meetings. You can't say, hey, coach, I go to practice every day. I mean, come on, everybody does. Everybody works out. Everybody lifts. And
Yeah.
so if you're just checking the boxes, then, you're just doing enough to be there. You're doing enough to beat out the kid in high school.
I tell you, I hope everybody's listened to this because this is really cool stuff. You said standards, right? Can you talk about standards, you know, that you follow that playing college football helped you realize maybe now in life what your standards are all about?
Yeah, for sure. I think, my standard when I was playing used to be the standards that others gave me. Like I said, the standard was going to class. The standard was being there on time. The standard was sitting in the first two rows and saying hi to your professor and, doing all those stuff. And that's the standard. But I sort of reshaped that standard to being that's more of the expectation. You're kind of expected to sit in the first two rows. You're kind of expected to say hi to people. You're kind of expected to ask for help when you need help. And so I'm maturing and separating standards from expectations. And I feel like when I was younger, I got them confused a lot, and I thought I was meeting the standard, but I was probably just meeting the expectation, and the standard should be set much higher if you want to achieve that level of success. And so, to give you an example, to be a physical therapist, you have to go to PT school. Now, a lot of people would see that as a standard. That's an expectation. You
Yeah.
cannot be a physical therapist without going to PT school, right?
Yeah.
That's the expectation. But what's your personal standard? Are you going to stop after PT school? Or
Mm,
are you going to do a residency? Are you going to do a fellowship? Are you going to do continuing education? Are you going to get additional certifications that can, help progress your patients faster, get people better faster? That's a personal standard. That's a professional standard. The expectation is that you graduate school and you keep up with your license every 2 years. That's an expectation. It's not a standard. A standard
Right.
is, where are you going to go from here? Are you going to continue to get better? Are you going to maintain? Are you going to regress? What are we doing? And so just
That's
maturing and,
cool.
and setting those personal standards for sure.
That is so cool. I mean, as I'm looking down here, I'm writing all kinds of stuff down you're saying, right? And you should set, your standards should be higher than the expectations. That
100%.
and it's so true that so many athletes, they do check the box. Hey, I did it. This was on the list of things to do. They said to do, these workouts over the summer or over the winter or whatever. They said to eat this. They said to do that. I did it. And it's really, well, what else did you do?
Yeah.
Right? You want to play at that level. You're right. It's so true. It's not just checking the boxes. It's what else are you going to do? And it's those athletes that do the extra stuff above the expectations are the ones on the field,
Yeah. And they
you
they
know?
the most successful players that I've been around had a very high personal standard.
Yeah.
That's what separated them. Were they any bigger, faster, and stronger than the rest of us? Not by much.
No.
Not by
No.
much.
No. So how about, and you're probably going to give me a good answer for this one, is was there any challenging part for you transitioning out of football? Or was it like easy for you because you were so set in stone of what you wanted to accomplish academically? Like, football's over, let's keep going.
It was a challenge from an identity standpoint, and just being young and being very attached emotionally to football. So you grow up and you're Tommy the football player. I mean, you're the quarterback, and you it's a very strong identity to have, especially when that's kind of how you fill your emotional bucket. So when you wake up and you kind of really don't have anything to fill that emotional bucket, it's always a challenge, regardless of how you're doing academically or professionally. It's just, I'm the football guy. What's going on? Like, I'm so used to having a game day. I'm so used to people asking me about, XYZ, and you kind of fall off the radar a little bit, and you might slip down a couple social classes because you're no longer, that guy anymore. And so you're handling, all those different factors at the same time. So that's definitely a challenge. And then of course you have the big challenge of, you're independent now.
Oof.
When you're playing at that level, I mean, everything's done for you. Your laundry's done for you. Your shopping's done for you. Your food is done for you. Your bills are done for you. Your scheduling's done for you. I mean, there's not a single thing that you really have to do by yourself. And so you graduate and it's like, all right, appreciate you. Here's your piece of paper, and you're adulting for the first time.
Yep.
And so, and you're so used to being successful that now these little failures seem like they're gigantic,
Monumental.
massive. Yep,
Yep.
absolutely. You feel like your whole world's coming down because, you don't really know how to figure out these little things. And yeah, so it's definitely a challenge for sure.
So that leads you leading right into my next question, right? So a lot of athletes, Tommy, when they come out of school, like you said, they're so used to, here's when to go to class, here's when to eat, here's when to go to practice, here's when to go to therapy, here's when to go lift, here's when to go to run, here's when to go to study hall, here's when to go to bed, and here's when to get up tomorrow morning and do it all over again. It's just like this routine. It just keeps ripping. So work ethic. How did sports help prepare you or help you build or develop a work ethic that when football was over, you didn't have that problem of doing all the things you just mentioned?
Yeah, I would say that it actually impacted me negatively.
Okay.
Very interestingly enough, my work ethic was pretty high playing football, not as high as it should have been. Again, one of my personal regrets. But when I was done playing football, it tanked.
Mm,
It tanked. I mean, I felt like I really didn't have a purpose to do XYZ. And I think that's kind of a result of me checking the boxes and not having a high standard for myself, but just meeting the expectations. So I got so used to checking the boxes that when there was no boxes for me to check, I just simply didn't do anything. So my work ethic was pretty much in the gutter. Um, I did what I needed to do to skate by and kind of set excuses for everything else. And I found myself in that lull of what am I doing? What's going on? Because I feel weird. I don't really know, whether it's a purpose thing or, me being done playing football. I don't really know what the identity is. And but I knew I needed to kick it into gear because again, I've seen what happens to these athletes when they get done playing football and they don't have that purpose and they don't have that drive or they don't carry over the skills that they just practiced for 4 years. And they don't take advantage of the time management skills that you learn. They don't take advantage of the emotional intelligence that you learn. You learn how to be coachable. You learn how to be molded. You learn how to be a leader. You learn how to be a follower. You learn how to be great and you learn how to suck. You might be 10 times better than the last guy on roster, but the best guy on roster is also 10 times better than you. So you learn how to be middle of the pack. You learn how to lead. You learn how to follow. And so I wanted to take all those things that I practice, outside of winning or losing games and say, okay, I just got all this education outside of education. I'm either going to use it or I'm going to complain about it for the next 20 years and just tell people that I played football back in my day. I used to run laps around you. It's like, why can't I run laps around you right now? Probably because I didn't do anything. So that's
wow.
there. And I seen I might be butchering this, but I think it was a webinar with not a webinar, the retirement speech by Bill Belichick when he said that his wife tells him all the time that if you're still talking about what you did yesterday, you didn't do anything today. And I stand by that quote of like, okay, playing Division I football is really cool. You know, I did it years ago. So, if that's the highlight of what I'm talking about, then what did I do in the years since? So just trying to stack on those accomplishments, stack on those memories, stack on that path of success of like, yeah, I played Division I football, but that's kind of where it started. It's
Yeah.
not it's not the end of my
Yeah.
story. That's the start.
That
So
was a spark of your whole accomplishment.
yep.
That
That
wasn't
was
the
probably
end.
the least successful thing I've done so
Yeah.
far.
That is, I'll tell you, you know, I like what you said, Bill Belichick, stop talking about what you did yesterday. Just think about it, his level. Probably the greatest NFL coach ever walked the face of the earth. You know what I
Yep.
mean? As much as people like him, don't like him, whatever. And his wife is telling him that.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's like, holy smokes. You think she'd be like basking in all the glory of everything they did because she rode along with it,
Yep.
but he's got a tough life.
Oh yeah.
Right? So what if you look at, it's post graduation, talking about mental stuff. Let's talk about the mental side of things for a second. Playing college football, it's mentally grueling, not just physically, it's mentally grueling, right? So now you're out of school. What kind of things do you practice? What kind of resources do you have? What have you found that's helpful to keep you like mentally sharp and focused so you don't go into those bunks like you talked about before where you said your work ethic tanked?
Yeah, I think it's separating yourself from what you do. Being a person and separating yourself from being a professional. I think that's helped extremely with the mental health of being comfortable. So when you separate yourself, you tend to be egoless. You tend to be selfless. Um, you tend to care less about, you know, unconstructive criticism and the uncontrollables. And so to give you an example, I can completely disassociate me being a physical therapist with me as a person. And so with that, I can take the coaching and the criticism of my ability to provide care as a physical therapist and not take it personally. I know I'm not a terrible person if my patient or my athlete does not get better. And so separating those things, I think a lot of times growing up as a football player, that is you. So if you play bad, you feel bad. If you play good, you feel good, and your mood and your mental health kind of match what's going on athletically. Whereas when now that I'm maturing, what's going on professionally does not affect me personally. I jokingly tell my patients all the time, my back feels great. Okay. When I go home today, I'm gonna feel great. I'm gonna go to the gym, I'm gonna lift, I'm gonna go home. My back feels great. So don't be scared to tell me that I suck. Don't be scared to tell me that this exercise is stupid. Don't be scared to tell me that I didn't educate you correctly on what your condition is, because I'm going to go home and feel great regardless. But my job professionally is to make you feel great. And so that's kind of how I separate those two clouds of thought, those two clouds of space. And I have mental clarity when I go home because I know that I showed up, I did my best, I asked for feedback, I'm going to get better tomorrow, and I'm gonna go back
Mm.
at it. So I feel like a good tool for the younger athletes is to be able to disassociate yourself from, professionally, being an athlete and being a person. So
Well, you just said something that you said a lot of cool things there, but
I lost you here, Jeff.
you back?
I can hear you, but I can't see video.
There we go.
I'm back.
We're back.
We're back.
You said before, ask for feedback. Do you know how many people don't have the courage to do that? Their ego gets in the way.
Oh yeah. And that
And
stops so many people from being successful because there's people that have a perspective that you don't have. There's people that have experience and education and knowledge that you don't have. And you will never know what your weaknesses are if you don't ask.
yeah,
And I think that's a lot of the times in football specifically, it's very cultural to not talk about a weakness, or you're all about exploiting somebody else's weakness. There's a weakness in that coverage, that guy's bad at man to man, or this guy's bad at this. And we don't ever look internally at like, hey coach, what can I do better, or what am I doing good at? It
yeah,
doesn't have to be negative feedback. It's like, hey, you're really good at educating these patients, but you suck at educating these ones. And so it's like, I need to know that in order to better myself, because again, I'm not just trying to meet the expectation, I'm trying to meet a standard. And so asking for feedback has been probably the best thing I ever done. And personally, and sadly, again, this is something I learned the hard way. When I joined the military after school, you're going to get it whether you want it or not. The
yeah,
feedback's coming. And so you can either get really good at receiving it or you can fold. And
yeah.
so, there's not a lot of room for error in the military. It's
No,
very black and white. And so you're going to get the feedback because it's not about you at that point. You have the ability to, affect someone else. And so the feedback's not for you, and most of the time the feedback is not for you, which also helps not take it as personally. If I have, I'm doing a sports residency right now, and tomorrow I have mentoring, and my mentor is a great physical therapist. And so if he gives me negative feedback, on a patient encounter, this feedback's not for me. This feedback is to make sure that this patient gets the highest standard of care the
Yeah.
next time they come see me. It's not a personal knock against me. It has nothing to do with me at all, to be honest. It's just making sure that the standard of care that I provide is the standard of care that I should be providing. And so, feedback's always warranted with me.
But that goes back to your standards again. You hear the word keeps coming up,
Oh
which
yeah.
is great, awesome, it's awesome stuff. So what advice can you give the current athletes, right, that are out there about preparing for life after sports? How do they get ready?
Yep. I would say ask for feedback, ask for guidance, and put yourself in situations that you would normally not put yourself, because you'll find your weaknesses, you'll find your strengths, and you'll find your interests. And I think a lot of the time they struggle with post football life because they don't know what they're interested in. They don't know what they're good at. They don't know what they're not good at. And even the ones who set the goals without knowing their strengths, weaknesses, and interests. And it kind of leads you down the wrong route, and then, you have a whole bunch of former athletes that go into all these different routes and they quote unquote fail at these different professional tracks because they never took time to self-reflect and say, hey, this is what I'm good at. This is what I'm not good at. This is where my interests lie. How do I get there? It takes a village, and you're so used to being that guy and kind of carrying the boat by yourself, so to say. And it just not how life works.
How about burnout? You ever get hit with burnout? Hey man, I just can't handle this.
Oh yeah.
I'm overloaded.
Oh yeah. I mean, I live overloaded, so I live in burnout, and I love it. I honestly love it. And it's scary to burn out, but I love it. You know why I love it? Because that's your standard and that's your wall. I'm finding my limit.
Mm.
If I've never experienced burnout before, then I'm riding low and slow. I'm playing it safe. I'm being very conservative, which is not it's just not how I roll. I want to get to a point where I want to rip my hair out and say I cannot do this anymore. And that's where I truly figure out what I can and cannot do. And so I have experienced burnout with school and scheduling and military and doing 30 million things at the same time. But when I look back, I did it. And now I showed myself what my capacity is. I show myself what my limitations are. And I know how to increase or decrease these capacities or limitations for things in the future. And so, now when I'm, pulling 60, 70-hour work weeks, I feel like I have free time because I know what my capacity is now. Now, if I was to pull 70 hours a week a couple years ago, I would feel like I was drowning because I would have never known where my capacity was and I would have never known how to improve that capacity. So I'm burnout is obviously not a thing that you want to have recurring, but it could be a lot healthier of an experience than I think people think about it.
Yeah. I mean, what you said, I mean, you find your own wall, right? You don't limit yourself. You don't play it safe. You keep raising your floor while you keep stretching for new capacity and new
Yep.
limits. So, and in reality, the harder you work, the more you push, the more burnout, the more overload. What's it really doing? It's raising your floor.
Yep.
To like, hey, that, like you said, now you're working 70 hours a week. It's not that hard. Whereas, years ago, it would have killed you,
Yep.
you know? That's awesome.
100%. 100%.
So stresses as an athlete, I know we kind of touched it all, but from where you're sitting, what do you see with the younger guys today, the stresses they're seeing in the college football, college athletic world? And how should they go about getting help for the mental stress, the anxiety that they're dealing with? Because we all dealt with it, right?
Yeah.
Like how can they get help?
So I think uh, specifically for those middle of the pack guys, but pretty much for everybody, get uncomfortable in those situations. Be comfortable being uncomfortable, and asking for help doesn't have to be a mental health provider, doesn't have to be a health provider, period. Asking for help can be you finding interest in something and then going to do that task. And so, like, for example, if you are feeling burnt out and you feel trapped and you feel like you don't want to talk to anybody about it, there's outlets that you can partake in that I guarantee 90% of the people who are also doing that activity are doing it as an outlet. And so find a club on campus that you're interested in. And for me, I did the kinesiology club, you know, and we would go and guess what we were doing? We were doing Olympic lifting. And of course, they thought I was Hercules because I'm doing a Division I strength conditioning program and I'm lifting with the general student body. And they're saying, "Hey, can you coach my form here? Hey, how does this look? Hey, does this look good?" And then you realize that you have an interest in coaching, education, instruction. It's like, wow, I would have never found this if I didn't put myself in an uncomfortable position. And so that helped me. That gave me clarity on I'm finding out more about myself than I would have known if I didn't, take these off-brand activities or these non-traditional activities around campus or, just my whole thing is be scared, do it anyway. Things are not going to be any less scary or any less hard. You're either going to do it or you're not, and so I have a couple quotes that I live by, but be scared and do it anyway is it'll always stick with me.
That's big. Be scared, do it anyway.
Yeah.
Well, this is an extension of that same question. So you talked about how can they find ways to maybe alleviate or deal with the stresses, right? Well, think about their athletic career from a positive side. How can they leverage that experience and bring it to succession or to succeed in a career outside of sports?
Yeah, I would say if you've had a successful collegiate athletic career, it's very motivating because you've shown that you can set goals and achieve them. And so, despite your professional career not having anything to do with athletics, if that's what you choose, you chose that you could set goals and achieve those things. You've set many goals, you set big goals. You show that you were coachable, you show that you were moldable, you show that you had a standard that was above the expectation. And so you have the tools at that time. You've already proven to yourself and you have evidence of a track record of doing things at that level. And that wraps back to the, being Division I at everything. You show that you can do it in your sport. You just have to prove it to yourself and show it to people that you could be Division I in everything. You know, I'm not here, and this you can call it competition, you can call it whatever you want. I'm not here to be an average physical therapist. I promise you. I'm not here to be good. I'm not here to be kind of okay. If I'm not striving to be the best physical therapist you ever met in your life, then what am I doing? You know,
Yeah.
that's that's not very Division I of me. That's not very professional of me. And so, like, I would tell somebody who's had a successful career athletically that you've already done it. You have the foundation. You proved it to yourself, and it's time to rinse and repeat and whatever you choose to do.
It's awesome. So looking back, not that you have that far to look back, how old are you now?
I'm 20. I turned 26 in 2 weeks. I'm getting old, Jeff.
26. Oh my God.
Getting
26.
old.
I'd pay to be 26. I have kids older than you. Um, looking back on your short, successful, athletic, academic, professional career, is there anything you do different?
Oh, I I wish that I had the wherewithal and maturity that I have now when I played. And I think that if I did, that I'd be playing football this weekend, and I'd be doing so at a very high level. I probably would have been able to maximize and match my talent with that maturity and hard work that I was kind of missing out on a little bit early on. So if I could do things differently, I would have kind of tried to mature and hunker down a lot earlier, a lot sooner.
Well, I mean, you just what you said there, maximize your talent and maturity. It's hard to do when you're young.
It's hard, yeah. I know
You know?
it seems so easy looking back, like, oh man, if I could get back into a locker room right now, I know I could be that dude. But
Yeah,
that's just knowing what I know now, you know?
right.
So,
There's so many talented young men and women who lack the maturity to understand the talent that they really have
yep,
and what to do with it.
yep,
Because part of it is because so many people have said, "Oh, you're so good. You're so," like you said, you get 5 touchdowns. Who cares? It's just that's their expectation, but they're not mature enough to understand that what they should do with it.
yep,
You know? Wow,
yep,
this is awesome. Well, listen, I've
absolutely.
asked you a ton of questions. We've been talking now for well over an hour. Um, which time flies when you're having fun,
Oh yeah.
right? Tommy, is there anything else I haven't asked you yet that you think we should chat about before we end the show?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot of bases. I really appreciate the conversation. I wish the best for, all the athletes coming through now. And my best piece of advice would be to reach out to former formerly successful college athletes that are currently successful professionals. Because I believe, if you make it to this level of success after football, then you probably have a good story behind how you got there. Sadly, it's a rarity right now, and so I would encourage all the current athletes that want to carry on that same level of success to reach out. Me personally, I'm an open book. I'll tell you how it is. I'll tell you what's not there. I'll tell you what's there. And so, yeah, just reach out, find a mentor. Don't be afraid to ask for feedback, ask for help. It's sports community is very small, so we got to stick together for
Yeah.
sure.
It's very small and it's very well connected.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Very well. Like you said, you mentioned Ryan Cassidy. He was on the show, weeks ago, which is great. So a bunch of you Rutgers guys have been on, which is awesome. Well, Tommy, listen, I've enjoyed every moment talking to you. I wish you nothing but the best. And I don't think you're going to stop, but let me know, when you get your next doctorate, your next degree, your next thing, and let's have you back and talk about, well, your career and how you've been impacting all these other people with what you've learned and the job you're doing and just the world that you're changing and affecting. It's
Oh
awesome
yeah.
stuff.
Absolutely. Would love to talk about it.
Yep. No, we're going to get you back on here. So thanks for being on the show. Have a great career, and we will get you back on soon.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.